Hey guys, if this is working, this is going to be my first actual solo video piece, if you even want to call it that. I don't actually intend for this to be a thought-provoking, um, huge piece of Chinese content. Rather, I was actually recommended to make a video based on my thoughts regarding a recent tweet about the disinterest in following China and how it's been hard. And I wanted to actually clarify a few things on a serious note, rather than a more trolly note that the platform of Twitter brings across in terms of kind of warding off the accusations of fanboyism and, kind of hop in the bandwagon in terms of results. So I won't lie and say it's not a factor, but it's definitely not the determining factor. So I'm going to go through a few points about what's wrong with China right now. Okay, so to provide a bit of context, I don't feel like the China that I'm seeing now is the unique Chinese League of Legends that I started with in 2013 spring and kind of followed with the same amount of passion in 2014. When I started following in 2013, 2014, China was full of flaws and they were relatively unknown to the outside of World Elite and Invictus Gaming at the Season 2 World Championships. And I think that was actually kind of cool. China definitely had their set of flaws, but it gave them a set of unique characteristics that really kind of gave them their own unique flair and set them apart from other regions. Um, Whereas if you could compare that to now, they actually lack identity. It seems like they're actually just a shittier Korea. And if anything, they've actually ruined two regions because of this. Now we won't see up and coming domestic talent in the LPL, or it's less likely. So the domestic talent pool is kind of done a disservice to because of all these transfers. And now we have a weaker Korea and a bunch of what ifs and how could this be or whatever kind of theory crafting going on for Chinese teams if we didn't take their talents, as we're obviously not utilizing them as well as Korean infrastructure would. Um, so that's the biggest thing. The China I'm following now is not like the China before. This is completely aside from the oversaturation problem, which I'll get to for Chinese content coverage, and just a lot more to do about that. Now, the other one that doesn't affect me anywhere near as much as my colleagues, which is probably likely because of the kind of stereotypical prepubescent crowd and demographic that encompasses League of Legends, and the fact that a lot of the Chinese enthusiasts happen to be females. Um, it's a little lighter on me. It's a little heavier on them, but I still am kind of pulled in, which is kind of weird. I get pulled into this fanboyism, and this is kind of a thing that's exacerbated by everyone doing Chinese content. If you write about those teams, and this is a little bit stronger for China, but it works for other regions too. Like if you're writing content for that team or you're an enthusiast, like people seek the need to seek you out and flame you on social media, and you just get really abusive. But it's actually really, really bad having talks and whatnot with my colleagues and like going and seeing some of the shit that's said to them, and there's breakdowns, there's a lot of things you don't see behind the scenes that are like really, really hurtful. um, and now that China's actually has such um, ridiculous expectations because of the talent and because of people not really understanding the infrastructure and what made China strong before, but also just because these are actually reasonable expectations, a lot of people take it way too far, and they essentially almost put the blame on people analyzing China rather than the Chinese teams. It's like they don't even shit talk the teams. They're talking like, oh, fucking Frosker and blah blah blah. Kelsey Moser is an idiot. Like Emily was stupid on summoning Insight. It's like, come on, man. It's just not cool. So that brings me to the next point. That kind of links into the last point. Piled with this abuse, it's just not as rewarding. Like, I actually feel very happy about the fact that, in a way, I actually kind of brought Chinese content to the forefront back when nobody in the West was covering China and it was just off Chinese streams and there wasn't like a huge saturation of Chinese content. I was just like, okay, cool, I can get the stats. Like people don't have to follow this region because it's like, it's so close and tied with Korea or some people that were watching, GPL at the time. It was all at the same time, and so people could just like read these recaps and stuff I was doing with the stats and fun facts and MVP awards and background and narrative of the history of the teams and stuff like that. And this is something I was pretty proud of starting because it allowed people to have context of this once mysterious and kind of dark horse region that kept coming up over and over in Worlds. Um, but now that it's pretty much just seen as like the other East team that's not Korea and they're sucking and they're going against these Western teams, it's not actually rewarding to indulge into this kind of content or write about it because you're you're basically diluting potential content from other regions to focus on a region that people are just not going to appreciate really. Uh, this isn't to say that I will completely cut out content from the Chinese region or LPL or discourage people I work with from doing the same. It's just simply not rewarding. I mean, a lot of research and effort goes into making Chinese content because of the fact that it's not as transparent as other regions and because it's harder to get a direct access into the teams and the atmosphere and talk to the people that like create the infrastructure compared to pretty much any other region and especially like on site like live interview type stuff because getting traveling visas into China is different than Korea or especially places like Europe and stuff, right? So it's just it's not quite as rewarding and it's in a way it's actually not resource efficient to focus on that. Now, let me get on to my next point here. Um, so yeah, on top of those things that I mentioned prior, I also might have some opportunities in the future that are coming up where it's not just specifically talking about a broader scope in terms of regional League of Legends, but games in general. I'll probably have more news about that coming in the next week or so, but it's not really something I can pigeonhole myself into anymore. And I think a lot of other people that even aren't in my position that do follow League of Legends China that are kind of in a similar position. Like the only person covering China that's vaguely um, exclusive to it was Frostgren during her time casting. But even before that, she was casting challenger teams. She was doing artwork. She like kind of freelance graphic design and stuff like that for a lot of people. She was very good at it. Same with Kelsey. She was prior to China being blowing up and stuff. She did when I was working with her in Gosa Gamers. She was doing drafts and setting up tournaments and working on that kind of thing. And even now she's writing about Europe pretty much just as much. Emily started with Korea. Uh, Now works on China a lot, but is very multi-regional. Heavy focus on Brazil before she even got to the Chinese point, like Razzleplasm assistance coaching with Dignitas EU. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean nobody's like really focusing hardcore just on China, just despite really being enamored by the region. Just because of their narrative and their unique play style and stuff like that. So yeah, the abuse is kind of weird. Not to mention, it's a lot less welcoming to do it now because now that there are resources and now that there's already a lot of content just because Riot's taking over the LPL broadcast, uh, it's there's like a lot less of a void to be filled. I mean, it's still there, but there's a lot less support now. Like I see a lot of people that are living in China tweeting angry tweets or being not very happy with the Western coverage with good reason. We've had a few years of practice and it should be top notch by now or close to, and people are it's acceptable for people to accept those standards or expect those standards. Sorry. Whereas when I did it, people kind of latched on to me, and I've had a lot of people, like Chinese people, reach out to me and say like, "Hey, it's really cool that you're doing Western content. Here's some help. Here's translations. Here's some insight into the teams. Here's a like translated content from other areas," and it was like fed to me, and that was really cool and really rewarding. That just doesn't really exist anymore. So hopefully, I kept this short enough that it's not ruining people's attention spans or stretching on too long. But I just wanted to provide a little bit of context about what I was saying. Um, and honestly, in conclusion, it really boils down to the fact that China's not really unique anymore. They have flaws, but they're not uniquely identified to China. They're not like a style, like the heavy dive and aggressive style with a really linear and tunnel vision focus on hard 80 carries. Like that's 80 carries in China aren't even like considered the best in the world anymore, if anything in at all, really. And a lot of I don't know, a lot of talent there just kind of maybe the changes to streaming income and revenue will help China next year. I don't know, but either way, I kind of feel like I've just been dragging myself along to continue enjoying China when they lost the reason why I enjoyed following them in the first place. And it's like one of those things where you might as well just focus and watch the LCK. Uh, so I really, really hope that my own personal discouragement doesn't discourage other people in my position to continue doing stuff. Like there's a lot of insanely talented people doing Chinese content now that I think should continue doing it, like Stephen Yu, Kelsey Moser, etc. These guys pretty much have you covered. They've gone really, really far, and if anything, I'm just really glad that I was able to bring China into the spotlight and start doing the coverage. And it's actually really cool to see that it has grown to such an extent, but not in the way I wanted it to, so to speak. So, um, hopefully this clears things up. If people like me vlogging, I'll do more. But that's it for now. So